Okay, I want us to really figure out what's going on with these two braitot, in terms of what do we learn from Machteret. So, first of all, here's our first braita. I'm not going to read through it. You all read through it. The first thing we need to do is identify which are the words that come from the psukim. Okay, so you'll notice Tanar Banan Machteret. So this is a midrash halacha form. It starts with the word from the verse, and then says, what do we learn from this word? And then it's going to go on to say what we don't learn, what we learn from other words in the same verse. So we've got Machteret. Now, Talmud Lomar, we'll talk about that in a second, but that's going to signal words from a verse. Yimatzaganav, there you go. Again, Ma Talmud Lomar, word from Machteret, and those are our quotes. So now we've got this version. Now, the next thing is, what are our key terms? The most important key term here is Talmud Lomar. We're going to ask a question, and Talmud Lomar is going to give us the answer. And when it says Talmud Lomar, the answer is always going to be words from the verse. Sometimes it'll just say Talmud Lomar and the words from the verse. Sometimes it'll give us the words from the verse, and then what we learn from those words. Now again, Ma Talmud Lomar, over here. What do we learn? Well, what do we learn from, again, a word from a verse? So, Talmud Lomar, Ma Talmud Lomar, always going to be followed by the word from the verse. But also, we're going to be able to put punctuation before them. So here we go. Now, because we know that the word Machteret, that's the word from the verse, so Machteret. What do we learn from the word Machteret? Well, here's what we learn. Then, we're going to ask, you notice that before this Talmud Lomar, there's the word minayin. So all this stuff is going to be a question, to which Talmud Lomar is going to be the answer. Okay, Talmud Lomar. How do we know da-da-da-da-da? That's why it says, right? Talmud Lomar literally is Lomar, to say, Talmud, to teach. Right? It says this word to teach us something. Or that's why it says, but the it here is always the Bible. Talmud Lomar is a midrash halacha form that is focusing us on a word from the word, a phrase from a pasuk. So, Talmud Lomar, the Torah says such and such, which tells us da 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 da. And again, the opposite, Ma Talmud Lomar. Why does the Torah say this word or phrase? Again, Talmud Lomar, that's why it says Ma Talmud Lomar. Why does it say where it is always the Bible? So, here we now have our statement broken up a little more. Okay? We now know also that Im Kain, right? If so, right? If what you said is true, then I have another question. Right? So, and Ma Talmud Lomar is a question, and then we're going to have Mipnei She, you know that term, is an answer. So again, we start with a statement about Machteret. We then are going to have a question, to which Talmud Lomar gives an answer. Then Im Kain is a follow-up. Given what you just said, given that answer, I have a follow-up question, and then an answer to that question. So that's all about structure. Now, here we have it. I added one or two more punctuation points, right? Two other words we need to know. Ein li ella. I have nothing but, or I only have. In this case, I only know, right? When I say Machteret, ein li ella da da da, I mean, from the word Machteret, I only know about Machteret. Right? From the word Machteret, I only know that this law applies to someone coming in through Machteret. Minayin is a word that means, from where do we know? Right? We've seen this a couple in other contexts, where we say, oh, from where do we get this law or this idea that somebody stated? Right? The only trick here is that here, the word minayin comes at the end of the phrase. Right? Machteret, I only know about Machteret. I only know the law applies to Machteret. From where do I know that the same law applies to Gago, Chatzerot, V'Karpefo? Answer, Talmud Lomar Yimatzeh Haganav. Which means, and we'll get to this in a second, Mikol Makom. We'll get to that in a second. Okay. So now practically, what does it mean? Machteret, I only know about Machteret. How do I know that if someone's coming in via a gag, a roof, a courtyard, an enclosure, that the same law applies, that I can kill him if necessary? Where do we learn that? And they say we learn it from the next words. Remember, im b'machteret yimatzeh haganav. Right? Literally, that all that means is if he's found in the tunnel. The Midrash splits it into two possibilities, either b'machteret or yimatzeh haganav, which ultimately means it becomes in essence down here, im b'machteret, if in a tunnel, or anywhere that yimatzeh haganav. If I encounter him or I see him in a tunnel, or anywhere, any other place where I see the ganav coming in, I'm permitted to act. Okay? Mikol makom, which means not from every place, but in any case, no matter what. Right? Mikol makom, even so. Right? So now it applies to Machteret, and in whatever way he's coming in. Okay, so that's the first half of our brayta. Second half. Im kain, if so, if it's true that the law of Machteret really applies to Machteret and all these other cases, ma tamud Machteret. Why did it use the word Machteret? Right? After all, it's much more general. Now here's the key. Brayta 1 gives one answer. Brayta 2 gives a different answer. Brayta 1. Mipnei she rov ganavim mitzuyin b'machteret. Matsui, right, not a baseball player for the Yankees, but found, common, from the root matzah, but without the aleph. Most ganavim are found, or they're most commonly in the Machteret. Right? Not that it's the most common type of thief, but for them, Machteret was the most common type of sneaky, forced entry thief. The point being, Machteret isn't unique, it's just an example. And that focuses on, the second brayta. Let's look at it. Tanya idach, Machteret. Again, ein li ela Machteret. This whole thing is exactly the same. And the question is exactly the same. What's crucial? This last phrase. Machterto, his tunneling, zohi, is equal to hatra'ato, his warning. Hatra'ah, warning. So, here they don't say, no, Machteret's, in the first brayta, Machteret, they're saying, yes, Machteret's no different than any other case, it's just an example. Here they're saying, no, Machteret is different. Machteret, and here we're really talking about the act of tunneling, is his warning. Counts as his warning. His action counts as warning. In other words, he doesn't need a separate warning. Why is that interesting? Well, it's primarily important in teaching us the converse. That if he wasn't tunneling, he would need a hatra'ah. Meaning, anyone who's coming in a way other than tunneling, we have to give him some sort of warning before we act. Okay? So, that changes our scenario a lot. The guy who's coming in all different ways, what kind of warning do we need to give him? We'll talk about that more. Okay? But the crucial thing for us to see is, and this is where Rashi's going to come in and really elaborate in an important way, that there's a difference between Machteret and other types of thieves. Machteret doesn't need a warning. Other thieves do. We'll talk about why. And again, we're not going to limit this to precisely the case of Machteret, but what we're going to try to do is describe what's unique about a Machteret type of case so that we can differentiate what types of ganavim we would class in the Machteret group and what types of ganavim would be the all other types of cases group. Okay. I will see you when we next have class, either, and happy learning.